before I set anything up, I'm going to just talk about this a little bit. This is the fence. If you ever have to replace these get worn down and messed up after a while. I would make them even thicker than this. And when I'm with them bolted on here, you could take this thing and put it on a joiner and flatten it all together. You could probably even do it now. These bolts are still in here a ways, see? And when this gets, I might do that at some point. Just make sure it's on there tight. This is loose right now, but you can bring that to the joiner and flatten it, and that'll make a nice straight flat surface, and then just put it back on here. Of course, this fence, you loosen these things up, this fence will move back and forth. And underneath here, if I unscrew these, you'll see that there's 3 places for the fence. So if you have a, depending on the size of your bit, you might need to move the fence forward and back and place it in one of those 3 holes. These things I just hand tighten them so they're easy to take apart and move, so I don't have to go find a wrench. And of course, you see all these holes, that'll move, you know, the fence boards itself back and forth depending where you put them. So if you have a big bit so it doesn't hit the bit, you might need to open that up. I try to keep it as close to this as possible so the boards don't tend to want to go in the hole, because the bit always seems to want to suck it into the hole. And of course, you see these rings here. These are removable with a larger bit. They might hit the rings, so you move. They come out. Let me just take this apart again to show you. Yeah, these rings will pop right out. Sometimes I even had to remove this big one that screws out for a big raised panel that was in there, panel bit. But
those are just spacer rings
yeah,
for different sizes.
fills in the hole for smaller bits, and move them out if you have a big, like you might have a big raised panel bit, like find it here somewhere. You know, you might have something like this that you're cutting with down in there. So we put that in there. Of course, these hit. All these will have to come out because that bit takes all that space up.
Right. And then you'll have a gap there, right? You'll have a little bit of a gap there.
Yeah.
in the hole.
Well, there's always going to be some gap.
Okay.
But anyway, put this back here for now. What else do I need to talk about? So over here, of course, this is the start and stop, and this cranks a bit up and down. Has a lock on it. Maybe I'll talk about this power feed for a minute. When this is set up, the wheels want to be 1/4 to 1/8 lower than the thickness of the wood. Yeah, so it puts some pressure on it. Yes. This one here brings it up and down. And of course this one moves at an angle, and this one, let me loosen that up. It's easier to loosen and tighten these with this pipe. See how it pulls it in and out. when you're running, when you're using this, you want to angle a little bit so it pushes the board against the fence. If it was angled, like if the board is running this way, if it was angled out, it would actually push the board away from the fence. So you always keep it at a little angle to the fence.
So the direction of travel for the board is this way?
Sometimes.
It could be either way,
Yeah.
depending on your bit and which way you want to run it. There's a switch down here, as you asked that question, that changes the direction of the motor.
Okay.
You can run that way or this way. I like to cut, like climb cut, like, you know, so if I'm cutting with this, I like to go from this way. So it's just chopping a little, it's not cutting into it, it's sort of cutting pieces away from your wood. You get less tear out that way. Anybody understand what I'm talking about with that? Like when you trim rounding, you go backwards with it because it's just chopping a little at a time
Right.
instead of going into it, so it won't pull splinters off. So I'm always doing this kind of climb cutting with this, going the opposite. Occasionally, on some instances, you can't do that, but when I'm doing door parts, you can't really do that. You have to go into it. So, but most of the time, you're making trim or stuff. You just okay. We'll talk about changing parts out later. Let me show you some of the parts. So this is able to, as you see, there's a bit here that holds the router bits. And I should probably take that out now. Maybe we'll get to that. And so we have another shaft here that's, I guess this is inch. Yeah, this is an inch diameter. This is a bigger shaft. We'll take some of these cutters that have an inch in them. And there's some cutters that have like inch and a quarter, and they don't fit on there. But there's some little bushings that go. I just keep them here. Some little bushings that go on the cutters, so they fit on that inch shaft. I think there's some taller ones of these. So yeah, here they are. Here's a taller one. I always keep those right here. So you have an inch shaft, and you have a 3/4 inch shaft, which will take, some of these cutters. And you also have where'd that go? Yeah, this is a 1/2 inch shaft. It got a bit on it. 1/2 inch diameter. Maybe we'll get it. And we also have these guards. Now most of the time I don't need to use these because we have that fence and the power feed. But if we were doing some curved object with one of these big cutters, or if these big cutters were open, you'd put this on top of the cutter so you always
You always have a guard on it.
you always have a guard. So these are here for a safety thing. It's interesting, I mean, you could use this like a big router, and there's actually some bearings here that we've had for running some of the bigger, bits on. You could actually, put the bearing on with this raised panel cutter and cut a curved raised panel with it on here. It's just like a, you know, like a router with a flush trim bearing, but it's a little bit bigger deal. Maybe I'll set something up like that to show you how to do it. It's a little scary.
Now, do you want to use high speed or low speed when
Oh,
you're using these?
okay. Now there's two. We'll go look in there. That's a good question because there are two speeds that this thing runs on. Let me just show you some of the possibilities. So we got raised panel bits, and any of the router bits can go in here. And we got all the the bits for making.
Different trims.
Yeah, there's different bits for doing the open stick joints on the door. This one has a little stepping round. I don't know if you can see that shape of that. I think one is, do we have the OG too? Yeah, this one has an OG cutter. So we have a few things here that we can make doors. I know we don't make many doors, but some of the doors I've made here are stuff that the door companies didn't want to make because they were a little bit more specialty, and we had to make them here. Especially some of the curve stuff. So there's a few different bits here. I think there's another one down in here for making doors. And there's some various raised panel bits. There's that one. It's curved. There's a straight cutting one. There's an OG raised panel cutter. Plus there's all kinds of bits in here. Round overs and just like you'd use on a router, just all kinds of bits here. I keep a lot of these beading bits here because it's so much easier to bead on a machine than with a router.
You can do more pieces at a time. It would take a lot less time to do
Yeah.
a pile of trim rather than do it all with a router. It's tricky though.
Here's another little deal. This is a holder for knives. You can get knives ground, so there's some in here, ground to any shape you want, put them in here.
Uh-huh.
And that goes on here. This comes with a bearing on it already. It's kind of nice. But here's all some of these we had custom made in the past for doing certain things. We don't do too much anymore. But there are some, these things come in handy. Here's like a bit for that, like clover molding with the 3 steps. We were making that for a job, but this stuff is here, and occasionally you might need to use these. And one of our lessons is going to be setting this up, but I'm not going to do that today because I don't have enough time. This would be one lesson in itself, probably. Well, it's good to know. It's good to kind of know what's in here and what we can do. So, you know the capabilities. All right. Now, someone asked something about the speed. The large wing cutters operate on a slower speed, and that's where I'll answer that right now. It's where you put the belt. Right now, the belt is on a faster speed. The two top. You always line these 2 pulleys up. The belt's on the top 2 pulleys. That's the faster speed. You put on the lower 2 pulleys, and it goes slower.
Okay.
I forgot what the RPMs are, but any of the big wing cutters, they need to be running slower. You'll see when we put one on. It's a little intimidating.
One thing is, if y'all move this to change bits, this will fall over.
Oh yeah, this thing's pretty heavy. That's a good point. And when you bring it out here, yeah, I'll either spin it all the way around, or I'll just, if it's in the way, and I'm not going to use it,
yeah.
Just top it.
I'll do something like that, or else it can be spun around back to there. But if it's hanging out here, this thing will tip over.